Now, listen up, particularly the men out there, because knowing more about the menopause could save your marriage. That's a dramatic claim, I know. But one made by a woman who has researched the subject and spoken to hundreds of women and men about the impacts of the physical and mental symptoms of the menopause on relationships, employment and general well-being. Now, Niki Woods has written a book called The Man's Guide to Menopause, Everything You Need to Know But Were Afraid to Ask. I spoke to her before we came on air.
Every single time that I'd done a manager training session, an awareness session in businesses, or any time I'd had a conversation just out and about networking, etc., with a man, he'd always said to me something along the lines of, I wish I'd understood more about menopause when my wife or partner was going through it. Or they would give feedback at the end of training sessions where they'd say, I really wasn't sure about coming to this, but I'm so glad I did. And I'm going home to talk to my wife now. And then I'd also had people turn around to me and say, God, I wish I'd known this before because it would have saved my relationship potentially. And I felt like there literally was all this information out there that was aimed at women. And it makes sense that a lot of the information is aimed at women. But the men felt like they didn't know where to go to get all the information in one go. And they felt like when they were looking at the information that was written for women, they were like either maybe looking at stuff that they were peering over someone's shoulder almost, it felt like psychologically, or that they weren't meant to be looking at. And also it wasn't explaining things in a way that was really talking to men and answering questions that men might have about how to engage in conversations, how to support their partners better, how to talk to their friends and colleagues better. So that was kind of why I did it. And then within that as well, I felt like there were certain sections that you don't generally find in a woman's book about menopause that I felt like men might not be aware of and need explaining to them, that maybe even their partner wouldn't realise they needed explaining to them.
And Niki, you said about, that phrase, if I'd known more about the menopause, it could have saved my marriage. That's quite dramatic, isn't it? Or quite significant.
And there's actually stats that seem to back that up, that there was some 2022 research by News and Health and Family Law that 73% of women blamed the menopause for problems in the relationship, 67% for arguments. And we also know that the ONS divorce statistics, that divorces do peak at 45 to 49, and it is 63% of those are instigated by women. So I think we can potentially extrapolate from that, but we also know that there's some research from, I think it's 2019, that 70% of men felt like if their partner had symptoms that it was affecting them, and 56% of those felt that it was a negative on the relationship.
So what kind of questions do you think that men are scared about asking that you can answer in the book?
So firstly, I think it's literally that they are curious to know just what's going on, because sometimes they literally don't know. They often say, I feel like I've lost my best friend, or my wife's or partner's angry all the time, or she's upset, or she's distant, or don't understand why. So I think a lot potentially can be about explaining the massive variety of symptoms that could potentially be the cause for some of these changes that they're witnessing in their partner. I think a lot of men, like a lot of women, are really shocked at how young perimenopause can start. I think they're really shocked at how profoundly some of these changes can impact us. I think that a lot of men also, they obviously want to have questions answered about libido, about sexual changes, etc. Maybe what they can do to try and make that not be the case. They want to know how to talk about these things in a way that they don't feel like they're going to say the wrong thing or offend us, upset us, both in work and at home. I think in work, men are not even sure if they should be part of the conversation, and I feel very much that they should be. And then I think also something that, especially when I've done sort of sessions for men in the workplace, they've been really engaged in, but sort of felt like they've learned a lot from, is talking about things like that men aren't necessarily aware of, about unequal mental load, explaining all of that, along with how to talk about that, how to potentially have conversations where they're being supportive, asking open questions, trying not to go into Mr. Fix-It mode, and holding space, the concept of holding space all of that can be a massive learning journey, and it's answering even questions they didn't know that they needed to ask, as well as the what's going on, the obvious question.
Niki Woods there at Menopause Experts.